In the heart of St. Petersburg, during the poverty-stricken days of 19th-century Russia, a young man named Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov wanders the narrow streets in despair. Once a brilliant law student, he has now fallen into misery. His clothes are ragged, his rent is unpaid, and his stomach is often empty. But what torments him most is not hunger, it is the dark idea growing in his mind. Raskolnikov believes he is not like ordinary people. He sees himself as someone destined for greatness, someone above the moral rules that bind others. In his feverish mind, he forms a theory, that extraordinary men, like Napoleon, have the right to commit crimes if their actions ultimately benefit humanity. To test this theory, he decides on a dreadful experiment. In a small, suffocating apartment lives an old pawnbroker named Alyona Ivanovna, a cruel, greedy woman who preys on the desperation of the poor. Raskolnikov convinces himself that killing her would not be a crime but a moral act. Her death, he reasons, would free the world of a parasite, and the money she hoards could be used for good. One hot July evening, he slips into her apartment with a stolen axe hidden under his coat. His heart races, his mind screams, but he carries out the deed. In a frenzy, he strikes her down. Just as he is about to flee, her innocent sister Lizaveta walks in. Horrified, Raskolnikov kills her too, almost instinctively. He escapes with only a few items and some money, far less than he imagined. But the real weight he carries is guilt, a crushing, invisible burden that begins to destroy him from within. Back in his tiny room, Raskolnikov collapses in fever and confusion. He hides the stolen goods under a rock and swears never to touch them again. The days that follow are a blur of sickness and paranoia. Every knock on the door, every glance from a stranger feels like an accusation. He becomes haunted by the thought that someone knows his secret. The city itself seems to close in on him. Its narrow alleys, the stench of poverty, the cries of the desperate. Raskolnikov's mind splits between pride and horror. One moment, he sees himself as a heroic thinker, the next, as a miserable criminal. The police begin their investigation, led by the sharp and psychological Porfiry Petrovich, who suspects Raskolnikov almost immediately. Porfiry plays a dangerous game, not by accusing him directly, but by drawing him into philosophical conversations about crime, morality, and guilt. He speaks calmly, hinting that true justice always finds the criminal in his own conscience. Raskolnikov, trapped in his own logic, tries to defend his theory. He insists that great men are not bound by laws meant for ordinary people. But as Porfiry questions him, Raskolnikov feels his confidence slip. His soul is unraveling, his crime is no longer a test of intellect but a torment that consumes him every waking moment. In the midst of his despair, Raskolnikov meets Sonia Marmeladov, the daughter of a drunkard who has turned to prostitution to feed her starving family. Despite her suffering, Sonia remains pure-hearted and deeply religious. She becomes the mirror to Raskolnikov's soul, the embodiment of compassion, faith, and forgiveness. Their friendship grows quietly. Sonia listens to his tortured ramblings and speaks to him of repentance and redemption. When he finally confesses his crime to her, she does not condemn him. Instead, she weeps and tells him that only by confessing to the authorities and accepting punishment can he find peace. Sonia's love becomes the one gentle force against the storm inside him. Raskolnikov's torment deepens. He visits the police station several times, almost confessing but always pulling back at the last moment. Porfiry continues to play his psychological chess, patiently waiting for the young man to break under the weight of his own conscience. One day, Porfiry tells him plainly that he knows Raskolnikov is guilty, but he also believes that genuine confession is worth more than any punishment the law can give. Raskolnikov leaves shaken. He wanders the city all night, torn between pride and guilt. When he finally meets Sonia again, she begs him to bow down at a crossroads, kiss the earth, and say aloud, "I have killed." After a long struggle, he does just that, publicly confessing his crime and surrendering to the authorities. Raskolnikov is sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. Sonia follows him, leaving her home behind, to live near the prison camp and offer him comfort. At first, Raskolnikov remains cold, still clinging to his intellectual pride. He tries to justify his crime, claiming it was a mistake of reason and not a sin. But over time, he begins to see the truth, that no theory, no extraordinary man, can justify taking a life. It is only through suffering that his soul begins to heal. Sonia's unwavering love becomes his salvation. In the quiet, icy landscape of Siberia, Raskolnikov experiences a spiritual rebirth. He realizes that love and humility, not pride and reason, are what truly make a man extraordinary. In one of the novel's final moments, Dostoevsky writes that Raskolnikov feels the first stirrings of life again, a heart that had been dead begins to beat once more. Crime and Punishment is more than a story about murder, it's a story about what it means to be human. Raskolnikov's journey mirrors the struggles within us all, the battle between pride and humility, reason and compassion, sin and salvation. Dostoevsky suggests that every soul can find redemption, no matter how deep the fall. In the end, Raskolnikov's punishment becomes his cure, and his crime becomes the beginning of his awakening. When we close the pages of Crime and Punishment, we are left not with horror but with hope. Dostoevsky reminds us that suffering can purify the soul, and love can resurrect even the most broken hearts. Raskolnikov's story teaches us that no human being is beyond forgiveness, so long as they face the truth and learn to love again.